So let's face it, the ban list was kinda subpar as the only big hit was Kashtira Rizart. That's it. A bunch of other cards probably should have gotten a hit because they represented a problem for the game either on the short or long term. Some of these cards should have gone limited to have their power level in check or even get banned in order to avoid the problem altogether. You could also say that we kind of missed out on a lot of opportunities to unban a lot of interesting cards. Basically, the ban list could have been perfect if we didn't focus only on Kashtira Rizart, but rather on the format as a whole. With that said, let's dive into the most important cards Konami completely forgot on the ban list. As soon as you smash the like and subscribe button. My man! Alright, so first things first is Fenrir. Of course, I keep mentioning him, but it's because the card is that good, and even though it is really good in Kashtira, it's also good in other decks. While Fenrir is either a 2 of or a 3 of, Fenrir can search itself, which is not really a fair mechanic. And the card is basically like a main deckable Pankratops because it's just as good going first as it is going second. It's an out to Floodgates, it can be a free interruption, and also again you're searching another copy of itself, which is like free discard fodder for whatever card you might want to be using. Right now I can imagine purely wanting to play 3 copies of Fenrir, but also other decks like Vanquished Soul or Branded Chimera or even Tier Elements. So in the Tier Elements deck, it's actually really interesting because Fenrir can search Tier Elements Kashtira, which is actually an in-engine card. And in Vanquished Soul, you can either search for a Fenrir or a Rizart so that you have an Earth or a Fire monster to reveal for your Vanquished Soul effects. You know, cool stuff for sure, but again, the card has been around for a little too long, so I think limiting the card is very reasonable. But realistically, I think there's no way in hell Fenrir dodges the next ban list, so I think we should be fine. Next up is Pot of Prosperity, and I think we can all agree on the fact that the card is a little too good at 3. This card allows you to dig for upwards of 6 cards from the top of your deck and get any of them as long as you banish up to 6 cards from your extra deck, and this is actually really good going first or second. And the drawbacks associated to the card are very slim. Unlike Pot of Duality, it's a younger brother, which also locks you under no special summoning. You can very much still special summon under Prosperity, you just can't do any drawing, which is irrelevant most of the time because you can still search, and the damage that your opponent takes is halved, nobody cares. And also, unlike Pot of Extravagance, you get to choose the 3 or 6 cards that you're banishing with Prosperity. In the past, we've seen Pot of Desires get limited because of, you know, the same reason I just mentioned, so it being just generically really good. But, you know, I think we can also agree on the fact that Prosperity is, you know, probably right after Pot of Greed in terms of the best pod card to ever exist. Desires makes you draw 2 cards, for sure, but banishing 10 cards from the top of your deck face down kinda hurts a lot. Whereas with Prosperity, banishing 6 cards from your extra deck really doesn't hurt that much, especially in a few decks. And we are getting to a point where getting 1 card of very high quality that you get to choose might be better than getting just 2 random cards. Quality over quantity. For some decks this matters, for some others maybe a little less. Nevertheless, I would not be shocked if Pot of Prosperity is going to be getting hit on the next ban list. It definitely should happen. Anyways, this ban list did give us some hits to Dragon Link, especially for Magnamud going to 1 and Chaos Space also going to 1. But let's face it, these hits are super soft, especially considering that Lubellion is still 3, it can still search Magnamut. So quite clearly, Lubellion should have gotten a hit to 1, and I actually also believe that we should have gotten the same treatment as in the OCG. So over there, every single bestial monster outside of Saronir is limited. Like even Baldric, which nobody was ever playing in more than 1 of. So you can actually argue that Saronir is the worst one, but in the Despia deck, it's probably the best. But yeah, the Bestials are extremely good, and while they exist at 3, they kind of remove all the incentive for any player to want to play other hand traps like DD Crow. Now, quite frankly, DD Crow does have some applications where the Bestials don't. For example, against Purely, when they go Lily effect to target a quickly spell in the grave, you can at least DD Crow that, whereas the Bestials just don't really do anything. But when it comes to Light and Dark decks, aka the best 2 typings in Yu-Gi-Oh!, Bestials completely outclass DD Crow, and it's not even close. So by limiting these Bestial monsters, you're not really killing anything because the combos featuring them still exist. The only thing that you're really doing is kind of force people to diversify their array of options by maybe playing DD Crow instead of, you know, the other Bestial monsters that they wanted to play. This is not unreasonable as it does force people to be a little more creative, and it also allows us to avoid stagnation. Because trust me, this game becomes extremely boring when the best decks to play against certain decks are the exact same for several formats straight. Again, my argument makes a lot of sense granted the fact that this is what happened in the OCG. And the same could very well happen in the TCG, at least in a few months, but I actually also believe that it should have happened on this ban list. As for the rest of the Dragon Link deck, I don't really care too much because I think the most unfair thing that they have about them is the Bestials. We'll take care of generic dragons next time. But do you know what we should have taken care of this time? Stupid game-ending floodgates that do not deserve to live. Dimensional Barrier is a big one that I absolutely despise, but I think Anti-Spell is probably the most hated floodgate in the game right now. The card promotes zero back and forth interaction because when you flip Anti-Spell, if your opponent has a lot of spell cards in hand, it's pretty much game over. You could very much side in Cosmic Cyclone to clear it, but there's only one small little issue. The card can still get negated, and if you have a bunch of spell cards, then you still lose the game. As if turn 1 boards weren't enough, you also have to deal with floodgates on top of that. Like, this is not a healthy combination. And modern decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Run anywhere between like 25 to like 60-something% spell cards, so sometimes getting denied like 4 cards in your hand can really hurt a lot. If we ban Anti-Spell, we're not making going first completely dead because people can still play other, interesting trap cards, quote-unquote, like Solemn Judgment instead. The card trades 1 for 1, so it's way more healthy than a card that can trade like 1 for 6. And as for D-Barrier, even though I personally want it to get banned, I don't think it's really realistic. It's more specific, and even though it is extremely powerful, at least you can kind of play some decks that don't really lose to the card. Because I can't really think of any deck that literally does not lose to Anti-Spell at all. Sometimes your deck might not have that many spells and you can still draw like all of them. I mean, my Mathmech deck used to run only 7 spell cards, and sometimes I would be drawing 4 of them while getting hit by Anti-Spell. I swear on my life, that actually happened, by the way. But yeah, crazy to think that the 2 floodgates I just covered are the bane to Pendulum's existence. That deck is just itching to see play again, but while Anti-Spell and D-Barrier are a thing, this deck is just not really good post-game 1. But again, that's another story for another day. I got a whole video on Pendulums for later on, so stay tuned for it. But yeah, with Kashtira previously being the best deck, the second best deck, Purely, will definitely take its place. This deck is quite dangerous, and I have no idea how the hell Sleepy Memory managed to stay intact. Bro, the deck can draw 6 cards on your standby phase, like what is this? Oh, and they're also ending on a monster that's unaffected by card effects, can spin a bunch of your cards, and they have answers to everything. Oh, and they never break, by the way, because everything is like a 1-card Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not too bad. I actually think this deck is way more fair with 1 Sleepy and 3 Delicious, so the other way around of what we currently have at the moment. Delicious Memory is really good because it allows them to end on Expurely Noir turn 1 very easily, but, at the end of the day, what do you prefer? Expurely Noir that summoned turn 1, or Expurely Noir that summoned on your turn that draws 6 cards? Yeah, it's pretty cancerous. I believe that Sleepy Memory should have definitely gotten limited, but at the same time I can still understand why that didn't happen because Purely Noir just recently started becoming a problem. Because, the card was printed in Duelist Nexus, so it would have made no sense to limit Sleepy Memory right away. But yeah, when it comes to other decks, I don't really have much to say. Unchained had to dodge the ban list because it's new, and Labyrinth isn't really unfair outside of Eradicator Epidemic Virus. It's the only bullshit the deck does, and the rest is totally fine. Well, Floodgates are bullshit too, but asking for like 4 Floodgates to die in one ban list is kind of unrealistic. I think if we just had like 2 or 3 more hits, this ban list would have been way more interesting. And maybe if we got like an old card unbanned, it also would have been way better. I keep saying that the Dragon Rulers are all garbage and can all come back to 3 and nobody would care. And trust me, I don't take anything back. They suck and we can all get them back at 3. Anyways, you guys let me know your thoughts about this ban list in the comment section below, and if you think that anything could have been better. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Peace.